It wasn't supposed to be like this. I had everything planned out. At least I thought I did. A successful career, a beautiful wife, and a dream that one day we'd have it all. But as life tends to do, it threw me a curveball. I'm Jack Mitchell, and I thought I had it all figured out, until I didn't. There's something about being in your 30s. You start to believe that if you work hard enough, you can make anything happen. That the dreams you've been chasing since you were a kid will finally be within reach. But what I didn't understand back then was how much everything could change. I had the money. I had the job. But somehow, something was missing. I thought about Emily, my wife. Emily Mitchell. We had been married for almost 8 years. Our relationship, though, wasn't what it used to be. It was comfortable, predictable. We fell into routines: work, dinner, sleep. Not bad, but not great either. We were like two strangers who shared a bed in a house. I had dreams of success, of becoming someone important. She had her own ambitions, but life had thrown us into a rhythm that felt impossible to break. There was always this nagging voice in the back of my head. A voice that told me I couldn't balance it all, my dreams and my marriage. That voice told me I had to choose. And so, I chose my dreams. I chose the idea of success, the long hours at the office, the endless grind. I thought I could handle it, but somewhere along the way, I lost sight of her. Of us. The thing is, I never thought it would be this hard. I never thought I'd have to choose. But here I was, standing on the edge of my own making. Emily had that look in her eyes. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't happy either. And that's when she said it. She said, "Maybe it's time we took a break." At first, I thought she was just frustrated. I figured she just needed space. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't about needing space. This was about something much deeper. I was too consumed by my own goals to realize I was losing her. And in that moment, I couldn't help but think, was it too late to fix this? I remember that conversation so clearly. It was one of those moments where you know your life is about to change forever. We were sitting across from each other in our living room. The light from the setting sun spilled through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. There was an uncomfortable silence between us. I could feel her eyes on me, studying me like she was waiting for me to say something, anything. But what was there to say? Emily had asked for space, and I had given her nothing but excuses. I had buried myself in work, thinking that if I just pushed hard enough, everything would work itself out. But the truth was, I wasn't being the husband she needed. And she wasn't being the wife I had promised her I'd be. We were strangers, living in the same house, playing pretend. My dreams of success, of achieving something big, had consumed me in a way I never expected. But now, I was starting to see the consequences of that obsession. There was a void between us, and neither of us seemed to know how to fill it. "Jack," she said softly, her voice trembling just slightly, "I don't know who you are anymore. We're drifting apart." That sentence hit me like a punch in the stomach. It felt like a knife was twisting in my chest. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could juggle my ambitions and my marriage, but I was failing at both. I could see it in her face, her frustration, her sadness, the way her eyes had started to lose that spark they once had when she looked at me. That spark I used to live for. I was torn. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay. I wanted to promise her that I'd change, that I could finally be the man she needed. But deep down, I knew I couldn't promise that anymore. I had already made my choice. The man I had become, the person I had allowed myself to be, wasn't the husband she deserved. And that was the hardest part of all. "Emily," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know how to fix this. Maybe we need a break." I could see the pain in her eyes, but I knew she had been waiting for me to say those words. It was over. The love we once shared was lost in the shuffle of our ambitions and missed moments. We sat in silence for a while after that. The decision had been made, but it didn't make it any easier. I felt like a failure, like I had let down the one person who had always believed in me. But in my heart, I knew this was the right thing for both of us. I needed to figure out who I was without the weight of this broken relationship. And maybe, just maybe, Emily needed the same thing. I don't know how long we sat there before either of us spoke again, but the words I heard next were some of the most heartbreaking I've ever heard. Maybe this is for the best, Jack. Maybe we're just not meant to be anymore. And with those words, everything changed. After the breakup, it felt like my world had been split in two. There was the part of me that felt free. Finally, no more fights, no more constant tension between us. It was just me, my work, and the endless pursuit of success. It felt like the perfect escape. I threw myself into my career, diving headfirst into long hours at the office. I told myself that I was doing the right thing. I was building something bigger than myself. I was finally going to prove I could be someone important, and on the surface, everything was going according to plan. I hit new milestones, secured partnerships, and grew my business to a level I'd only ever dreamed of. The money started pouring in, and with it came the lifestyle I had always imagined: expensive dinners, luxury cars, trips to places I'd only seen in magazines. It all looked perfect, or at least that's what I convinced myself of. But when the lights dimmed and I was alone in my office at night, something was missing. The emptiness that had been buried deep inside me began to resurface. The success didn't fill the void. It never did. At first, I told myself I was just adjusting. After all, I had just gone through a tough breakup, right? But then it hit me: success wasn't the solution. It never would be. It's strange, you know. The more I achieved, the lonelier I became. The quietness in my penthouse apartment was deafening. I could hear the echoes of the life Emily and I once had. The laughter at the dinner table, the random conversations before bed, the warmth of her hand in mine. None of that could be replaced by money or accolades. The strangest part of all? The more I focused on climbing higher, the more I realized I was climbing away from the things that truly mattered. I thought I needed success to feel fulfilled. But deep down, I knew I had lost something irreplaceable: love. The kind of love that doesn't require material wealth, the kind that's built on trust, connection, and shared moments. I would wake up every morning, look out of my office window at the skyline, and think to myself, is this what I really wanted? I had all the trappings of success: wealth, recognition, a name in the industry, but none of it made me feel whole. And as I sat there, thinking about how far I had come, I couldn't help but wonder, was it worth it? One night, I was having dinner alone, as usual, when I stumbled upon an old picture of Emily and me, taken during our first vacation together. It was just a simple photo, but it brought back memories of laughter and lightness, the moments that had made life feel alive. And that's when it hit me like a freight train: success. Money, status, none of it could replace the feeling of having someone to share it all with. I had traded it all for something that couldn't give me what I needed most. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. I missed her. I missed us. It was a random Thursday evening when I first met Sarah. I wasn't looking for anyone, honestly. I had convinced myself I wasn't ready to move on from Emily, or from the life we'd once shared. But there I was, at a networking event for work, standing in the corner of a crowded room, trying my best to appear engaged while my mind was still elsewhere. I was deep in thought, staring out at the city lights when I heard a voice interrupt my reverie. "Jack Mitchell, right?" I turned around and saw her standing there, a woman with dark, curly hair, wearing a simple but elegant black dress. Her smile was warm, almost familiar, like she had been a part of my life for years. It wasn't just the way she looked at me, but the way she made me feel like I wasn't just another face in the crowd. I didn't expect it, but there was something about her that pulled me in. Her name was Sarah, and she was one of the speakers at the event, a successful entrepreneur with a no-nonsense attitude. As we started talking, I found myself drawn to her energy, her confidence, and the way she spoke with such ease about the challenges she'd faced in her own career. We talked for hours that night, and the more we spoke, the more I realized how much we had in common. We both shared similar goals, similar values. She was ambitious, driven, and yet, There was a kindness in her voice that made me feel like I could trust her. We spoke about business, sure, but then the conversation veered into more personal territory. I found myself telling her things I hadn't shared with anyone in a long time, about the breakup with Emily, about my struggles, about my fears and doubts. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel judged or pitied. I felt heard. I felt seen. Sarah, in turn, shared her own story. She told me about how she had built her business from the ground up, how she had faced personal losses, and how she had come to realize that success wasn't the only thing that mattered. She told me that she had once been in a relationship where she, too, had sacrificed love for ambition, only to realize that without the right partner, none of the achievements in the world felt truly fulfilling. It was strange. There was this unspoken connection between us, a shared understanding of what it meant to put everything on the line for success, only to realize that something was missing. The more we talked, the more I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. There was no rush, no pressure. We didn't have to impress each other. It was just two people who had gone through similar experiences, trying to find a new path forward. I remember thinking at the time that maybe, just maybe, there was something real here. Something that could help me move past the shadows of my past. We exchanged numbers, promising to stay in touch. But as I walked away from the event that night, I couldn't help but feel something stirring inside me. I wasn't ready to jump into anything, not yet. But I hadn't felt this kind of spark in years. It was as if Sarah had reminded me that love wasn't just about the past. It was about finding someone who could meet you where you were. Who could see you for who you were becoming, not just who you had been. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to entertain the idea that maybe there was a future beyond my business, beyond my past with Emily. Maybe I was ready for something new, something real. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing Sarah more regularly, grabbed coffee, talked about life, shared experiences. But I wasn't ready to open up fully just yet. I had been burned before, and the thought of letting someone in again made my heart race with anxiety. But Sarah didn't push me. She gave me space, but never let me feel alone. Her patience, her understanding, it was unlike anything I'd known. One evening, as we sat at a quiet bar, I felt a shift. For the first time in a long time, I found myself telling her about my past, about Emily, the breakup, how I'd thrown myself into work to avoid facing the pain. And instead of judgment or pity, Sarah just listened. Her presence felt safe. And that was something I hadn't realized I needed until then. That night, something inside me clicked. Trust wasn't something you built in a day. It was a slow process, but it was worth it. Sarah wasn't trying to replace the past. She was simply offering a chance to rebuild something new. I wasn't rushing into anything, but for the first time, I saw that opening up again wasn't as scary as I thought. Maybe, just maybe, it could be the start of something real. As the weeks passed, I found myself gradually letting go of the past. The more I got to know Sarah, the more I realized how much I had been holding on to the pain of my old life. The guilt, the resentment, the what-ifs, they'd all kept me stuck, frozen in time. But with Sarah, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years: hope. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened with Emily. It was about accepting it as part of my story, part of who I was. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how to move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I wasn't rushing into a new relationship, but I was allowing myself to feel the possibility of it. Sarah was patient, kind, and understanding. With her, I didn't feel pressured to be perfect. I could just be me, flawed and perfect, but willing to try again. I started to believe that love wasn't about escaping the past, but about learning from it, and using those lessons to build something stronger in the future. The more I opened up to Sarah, the more I realized that I wasn't just healing from the past. I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. I wasn't defined by my failures anymore. I was defined by my strength to rise above them, to grow, and to believe that love, true love, could still be part of my story. As the weeks passed, I found myself gradually letting go of the past. The more I got to know Sarah, the more I realized how much I had been holding on to the pain of my old life. The guilt, the resentment, the what-ifs, they'd all kept me stuck, frozen in time. But with Sarah, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years: hope. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened with Emily, it was about accepting it as part of my story, part of who I was. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how to move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I wasn't rushing into a new relationship, but I was allowing myself to feel the possibility of it. Sarah was patient, kind, and understanding. With her, I didn't feel pressured to be perfect. I could just be me, flawed and perfect, but willing to try again. I started to believe that love wasn't about escaping the past, but about learning from it, and using those lessons to build something stronger in the future. The more I opened up to Sarah, the more I realized that I wasn't just healing from the past, I was becoming the person I had always wanted to be. I wasn't defined by my failures anymore. I was defined by my strength to rise above them, to grow, and to believe that love, true love, could still be part of my story. One evening, as I sat across from Sarah at a small dinner table, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We were no longer just two people figuring things out. We were two people who had been through the fire and emerged stronger. I had learned to trust again, but more importantly, I had learned to open my heart without fear. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't happen overnight. But in the quiet moments, the simple conversations, and the laughter we shared, I realized that love wasn't about the grand gestures. It was in the way someone made you feel seen, understood, and valued. With Sarah, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of the past anymore. I could breathe easier, be myself without second-guessing everything. We started talking about the future, nothing rushed, nothing forced. But there was a sense of certainty in the air. I was no longer trapped by the mistakes of my past, nor was I haunted by the things I couldn't control. Sarah didn't make me forget Emily, but she gave me the freedom to grow, to build something new. And it felt right. I began to see that love wasn't about replacing the old with the new. It was about the space you create for something better, for something that fits who you are now, not who you were before. And with Sarah, I found a love that made me feel whole again. I never expected it to happen like this. After months of growing closer to Sarah, I found myself at a crossroads. We had shared so much, and our connection had deepened in a way I hadn't thought possible after all I'd been through. It wasn't just the love I felt for her, it was the partnership, the support, the shared vision for what could be. Yet, as time passed, I kept asking myself, is this really it? Is this the person I want to spend the rest of my life with? One night, after a long day of work, Sarah invited me to a quiet dinner at her place. We'd been talking about our future for weeks, but something felt different that night. There was an air of anticipation that I couldn't ignore. As we sat across from each other, sipping wine, she smiled at me in that way that always made my heart race. And then, without any warning, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. My mind raced, and for a moment I froze. Was this what I thought it was? Sarah looked at me with those warm eyes of hers, her hand trembling slightly as she held the box out to me. "Jack," she said softly, "I've spent so much of my life chasing success, but with you, I've realized that love is what makes everything worth it. I want to build something with you. I want us to have a future together. Will you marry me?" It wasn't a grand gesture, no lavish setup or surprise party. But in that simple moment, I felt everything fall into place. All the walls I'd built around my heart, all the doubts and fears, started to fade away. This wasn't about the past anymore, it was about the present. About what we could create together. Without hesitation, I said yes. There was no doubt in my mind anymore. Sarah was the one I wanted to spend my life with. Not because she was perfect, but because together, we had created something real. Something built on trust, growth, and the understanding that love wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who allowed you to grow and become your best self. We hugged, tears in our eyes, knowing that this was just the beginning of a whole new chapter. And for the first time in years, I felt a peace I hadn't known before. Our future was ours to create, and with Sarah by my side, I knew it would be everything we both hoped for. The day we decided to move forward together felt like the beginning of a whole new life. We started looking for a house, planning our future, and talking about everything we wanted to achieve together. It wasn't just about getting married, it was about building a partnership that was founded on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the lessons we had learned along the way. We had both been through our own struggles, but instead of letting those hardships define us, we used them to fuel our growth. Sarah taught me that love wasn't just about passion or excitement, it was about the everyday moments of connection, the quiet understanding that comes with true partnership. She made me feel seen in ways I hadn't thought possible. I wasn't just her partner, I was her equal. And that was something I had been searching for, but didn't realize I needed until I found it. There were still moments of doubt, when the past would creep in, or when I worried about making the same mistakes again. But each time, Sarah was there to remind me that the past didn't define us. We were creating something new together. And with every passing day, that feeling grew stronger. Soon, we settled into our new home, and it felt right. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt this grounded, this certain about where I was in life. I had learned that life wasn't about avoiding mistakes or trying to control everything. It was about finding someone who would stand by you, even when things got tough. And with Sarah, I knew I had found that person. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know exactly where life would take us. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the future. We were in this together, and that was enough. I had learned the most important lesson of all: love is not about perfection. It's about growth, partnership, and the courage to take on the future, hand in hand. Looking back on everything, I can hardly believe how far I've come. There were times I thought I'd never escape the pain of the past, when I doubted myself, when I feared I'd never find happiness again. But now, with Sarah by my side, I can see how everything that happened had a purpose, even if I didn't understand it at the time. The journey wasn't easy, and it didn't follow the path I thought it would. There were moments when I wanted to give up, moments when I questioned my worth and whether I'd ever truly find someone who understood me. But through it all, I've learned that love isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you build, slowly and steadily, with patience, trust, and the willingness to grow together. The love I share with Sarah is different than anything I've known before. It's not based on idealized dreams or perfect moments. It's based on real, imperfect people coming together and learning from each other. We don't have all the answers, but we've learned how to support each other, how to communicate, and how to be vulnerable without fear. We've learned that love isn't just about the good times, it's about how you face the challenges, how you overcome them, and how you keep moving forward together. The future is still uncertain, and there will be obstacles ahead. But I now know that with Sarah by my side, I can face anything. She's shown me that true love is about choosing each other every day, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. I'm no longer afraid of what's to come. The past is behind me, and with Sarah, I know the best chapters of our story are still ahead. I've learned that life isn't about perfection, it's about connection. It's about finding someone who accepts you for who you are, helps you grow, and stands with you through it all. Sarah and I don't have all the answers, but together, we've built something real. And that's all I could ever ask for.